Today's lecture is on Hindu temple architecture. So we've seen this statue before. It's a representation of Shiva, face forward, face of male on his right shoulder, face of female on the left shoulder. But what's important for today's conversation is the fact that while this may be stone, or a statue may be wood, or a statue may be made out of clay, it also is the deity. So we call it the embodied divinity. God exists in the physical, experiential, and mental worlds of the worshiper. So when the artist creates the statue, the God is made physical in this ordinary, everyday, physical world in which we live. So the Lord can be present in many places. He can be present in many different sculptures. He could be present in the heavens up above. So there is no conflict in that. He can be ever present in our world. So the worshiper visits the image, does puja or prayer to the image, whatever type of bhakti is appropriate. And it is through that physical relationship of worshiper to the object in front of him or her that the worshiper gets this greater sense of the divine presence within the world around him. Now, in many cultures, in many religions, the statue, the painting, that visualized human created image of the deity is an aid to worship. Obviously, it allows people to focus their attentions, focus their prayers, to have a visual image within their consciousness. However, God, of course, exists in the larger world, in that universal cosmos. So that physical sculpture serves as a tool for the worshiper to attain or find the pathway to that higher understanding of God as the cosmic universe. So the Lord can be present on earth in a temple, in a sculpture, in any physical substance, as he is in heaven. So the artist or the architect uses this physical earthbound material as the vessel in order to house the divine spirit. That physical matter is transformed through the artist or the architect's skills and knowledge into that higher ideal, that divine matter. And so you create the sculpture and the God does come and reside within it. So the sculpture can hear, can talk, can act, can respond to the various stimuli in the physical world. So the Hindu temple becomes a place, a site, where people can find that path to know the God, to worship the God, and the path to moksha, the path to ultimate release. So it's a very important site. It's a potent site. It's a powerful site. It generates a tremendous amount of energy within that the worshiper can appreciate, can understand, can channel for their own personal benefit and spiritual salvation. Now, Hindu temples, in order to have that sense of power, needs to be constructed in particularly potent or fertile places. So the choice of the location for the construction of the temple is extremely important. So as we have on this slide, it can be by a river, in a forest, in a garden, in a valley. The one requirement is that there be a water source nearby, but that water source could be natural or artificial man-made. So the location is one very important element. The other element is verticality, that the temple needs to spiritually as well as visually lead the worshiper from the earthly realm up into the heavenly realm. Okay, in terms of preparing the site, to make sure it's efficacious, it's powerful, it will embody the right energy to maximize the God's force. There is purification. There are very elaborate purification rituals for the site. The soil has to be tested. The soil obviously has to be fertile. The ground is plowed a couple times. You plant seeds, you water the ground, you watch to see if grass or plants or grains will grow. You furrow it under again. You plant it again. You wait to see again if it is going to grow. So once you are completely convinced that the soil is fertile, potent, then you can start leveling the land in order to build the temple. So the temple is the house, the body, the substance for the divine essence. So not only is purification important, but even there's some design concepts, some structural elements that are also vital in the design of the building. The ground plan is square. Now, square is the shape of the heavenly world. Earth is a circle. So sometimes you have the earth within the square, the circle within the square representing the earthly zone, the earthly territory within the larger heavenly cosmos. But the ground plan is square because it is a diagram of the heavenly the heavenly divine essence. You have generally two parts in terms of a ground plan. You have the porch. We already mentioned that in Buddhism, the porch is a transitionary zone. The porch is called a mandapa. So the mandapas, temples can have a variety of one mandapa, two, three. We're going to see some examples today. And as we said, it's a transition from the external world into the secret dark world of the God. And what is the room inside? The room inside is called the Garbhagriha, which translates as being the womb chamber. So it's the dark interior space, the Holy of Holies, where people are able to have, through worship, that communion with God. The last term on this slide is the Shikara, and that is the tower that is built above the Garbhagriha. So you have the womb chamber, and on top of the womb chamber, you have the tower superstructure. Again, that gives a sense of verticality, the manifestation of the God going upward into the heavenly zone. So the architect must not only have a good sense of mathematics, geometry, building principles, engineering, but the architect must also be spiritually guided in order to ensure that he is the right state of mind, state of heart, to create a building that will be pleasing in the eyes of God. So we already mentioned in terms of construction, you have to test the soil, you have to purify the soil, you have to draw the square, which is the shape of the heavenly zone. The earth is a circle. So the room is square, the womb is seen as being square. In terms of materials, brick is actually the preferable material because brick is made of Mother Earth, of the actual earth, with fire. So fire imposes or infuses the brick with energy. So fire is energy. The combination of fire with moist earth creates bricks. Stone is considered to be a suitable substitute for brick. It is obviously much more durable. Wood is not preferred as much because it is not as durable, especially in various climate zones of India. But wood has a symbolism because it is potentially built from the wishing tree. We talked before how in many of the Hindu images we have the large pot of water out of which grows vegetation. So vegetation, lotus flowers, trees, plants, vines, creepers, all of these again represent wish fulfillment, the fertile zone, and the heavenly sphere. So wood is spiritually, symbolically efficacious for the construction of a Hindu temple, but again, it is not very durable. In terms of symbolism, we will discuss it coming up. All temples share one symbolism, and that is the mountain and the cave. The Shikara, the tower, is supposed to look like a mountain. The Garbhagriha, the womb chamber within, is the dark holy of holies. It is the cave. So actually, it's supposed to be that you're walking into a cave inside of a mountain. And cave imagery in many societies represents Mother Earth. So again, the communion with the natural, organic, fertile, divine essences that rule over the earthly realm. We also have the axis mundi, as we discussed in the Buddhist stupa, that sense of vertical pole, vertical line that goes from the Garbhagriha all the way into the tower. And what's at the very top of the tower is the cosmic egg. So you have the male and female elements remerging into one in the womb chamber. The tower is the vertical, and at the top of the tower is the egg. So the egg represents the successful fertilization of the male and female elements as both are reunited within the cosmic space of the Hindu temple. Temples face east, so when the sun rises, the first rays of the morning sun penetrate through the porch, and some of the rays of the sun actually reach the Garbhagriha. All right, so we'll now look at some examples. So here we see a very basic temple. You have the porch on the front. The porch, again, is just a covered passageway. It is not enclosed. It is open air. A porch is open air. So you walk up the steps. There we're on the porch. Remember, it's inside, but it's not inside. It's outside, but it's not outside. And that leads directly into the square room, which is the womb chamber. Now, very much like Buddhist rituals, you're supposed to walk around it in a clockwise fashion. So while you have the Garbhagriha, you also have a passageway within that square space to allow for the circumambulation. At the top, obviously, you see the tower. It is, slightly curved at the very top. It gives a curving contour, and at the top, that looks like a large flattened disc with ridges on it. You may say it looks like a pumpkin. That is the cosmic egg. That's what a cosmic egg looks like. So in slide 8, this is the ground plan of that temple. You got your steps. You have your open air porch, your mandapa. And then actually, before you get into the Garbhagriha, there's a passageway around the Garbhagriha. So that passageway may have windows, it may have open space, so there is a little light penetrating into that. So again, you walk around in circle as you have your prayer. Then you can walk into the Garbhagriha, but no light is allowed to penetrate into the womb chamber. It is supposed to be absolutely dark. So slide number 9, we're actually looking into the Garbhagriha. So there we have a nicely decorated door frame with various female figures, Devi figures, Yakshi figures. We even have some figures along the top. But here with artificial lighting in order to allow for the photographer to take the image, we have light now coming into the Garbhagriha. And there you see the interior is blank. It is relatively very, very simple, very austere. But you see on the floor, that is the linga inside of the yoni. Just as we saw in those other images of contemporary, like domestic objects that people would have in their homes or in their gardens, there it is. The womb, like the vagina, and then there is the linga projecting up. From that point of that intersection between the linga and the yoni, that is the vertical line. That is the axis mundi. So the axis mundi comes from that point of intercourse through the Garbhagriha vertically, through the tower, the shikara, and into the cosmic egg. It's all fertility imagery. So let's look at temples more broadly and review many of the theoretical issues that were in the text slides earlier on in the PowerPoint. All temples must have water near them. So here, obviously, we have Vishnu on a serpent dreaming up his Maya. So quite often in these, whether it's an artificial pond, an artificial pool, whatever it is, you will very close by have that image of Vishnu on a serpent. So in number 11, here again, it is an artificial pond. And in the middle of the pond, there we have a little shrine with a statue. It's hard to see here if that is Nandi the bull. If it is Nandi the bull, it obviously references that the temple is dedicated to Shiva. So this could be, where Shiva parked his vahana as he goes into the temple. So water source, this case it's not a Vishnu temple, it's a Shiva temple, but we have Nandi the bull. So water again, extremely important. This is one of the earliest temples. It was built during the Gupta era. It is a temple at the site of Deogar, and we actually have seen one of the relief sculptures already when we looked at Vishnu. This temple is dedicated to Vishnu. So again, Vishnu lives within that temple. You go into that temple, and that's where you can pray to him. He can hear you, he can see you, his presence is felt. Now, the temple at Deogar is not in complete condition. What we see here are steps on all 4 sides. The mandapa is missing. The mandapa may have been built out of wood because this is an earlier temple, but what you see now is simply just the Garbhagriha that stands. The rest has disappeared. Even the shikara is in bad condition. Obviously, the cosmic egg does not survive. So here we have climbed up onto the area, and again, under the mandapa, you could have walked in a circular fashion around the Garbhagriha. On the sides, just as in a stupa, one of the important points is the education of those who come to pray. So we have relief sculptures representing various aspects of Vishnu. So on the left, we can see Vishnu reclining on a serpent and another image from one of his avatars on the right. But temples come in all different shapes and sizes. It's going to be a square Garbhagriha. It's going to be the linga in the yoni. It's going to be a mandapa. That never changes. But what does change is the shape of the shikara, the shape of the tower, and how the tower is decorated, and the design of the Amalaka at the summit. And most of those differences are regional. So you actually can start to recognize a temple from central India versus a temple from eastern India or southern India. There are very distinctive styles and preferences that became hallmarks of these various regions throughout the country. So just to describe this one, again, it is one of the earliest examples. This is built out of brick. So again, brick is considered to be a holier material because it is the earth itself invested with a sense of electrical fire, heat, and energy. So when we talk about tapas and rasa, that heated electrical power with the more softer, more compassionate, joyous, humane characteristics, that is also represented in the brick and fire combination. Now, let's look at the shikara. In this case, the shikara looks more rectangular or broad rather than square or rounded in its ground plan. That actually is what happens at Gwalior and many other sites. It looks more horizontal, broader, more left to right stretched out. But when we start looking at shikaras, there's something you have to start to look at and analyze. The design is supposed to be a skyscraper, a multi-storied building. Look at the main first floor where the Garbhagriha is located. What are the basic parts of a floor of a building? You have like a little foundation, you got the wall surface with a window. Here you actually have like frames around the windows or vertical columns flanking the windows. And then it looks like you have a little roof line, a little horizontal curved roof line. Okay, you see that on the right side of this, our right of this temple. Then go up into the tower. So the first floor is functional, the other floors are not. But then you see, oh, there's another fake little window with nice little window frame and with another little roof line. And then we have another tinier floor, smaller floor with another open window with a roof line with a couple roof lines. And then again, so it's your first floor with a Garbhagriha obviously is life size. And then in each of the successive additional floors, they look shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter till the floor at the very, very top is simply just decorative. So it's a multi-storied building, each floor getting smaller and smaller. Again, only the Garbhagriha, the main level, is functional. Nothing else is functional. But that is the way you look at it. It's actually called a bhumi. A bhumi is each individual story of the building. So it's it looks like a multi-storied structure. So here we have the same temple, but we're looking at it from another side. So you have a very high platform, okay? Then you have the full-size floor, and on the back you have 3 windows, and then another one on the left, another one on the right, as the sides recess inward. Then you see a horizontal roof line and a second horizontal roof line. That is the first floor. So from this view, you have 5 windows, you have 1 roof line and a second roof line. Then you go above it and you see, ooh, I have another row of rectangular windows, and then I have 2 roof lines. Then I have another row with rectangular roof windows, and then 2 roof lines, and then another one. It's multi-storied structure. Each story becomes smaller, smaller, narrower, narrower, more and more decorative, more and more flat relief, until we get to the very summit where the cosmic egg would have been located. So we're looking at various early examples from Bitargon and Gwalior. And here again, it is the main floor. In this slide, you actually can see the doorway into the temple. Again, it doesn't lead directly into the Garbhagriha. It leads into the first mandapa and then into the interior space where you can circumambulate with the Garbhagriha in the middle. So you can actually see in this photo very well that when you look inside, it is dark. So it's like a man-made mountain with these dark recesses, these dark cave-like mysterious spaces. So you transition from outdoors, which is very bright and sunny, into the mandapa porch that is semi-lit, into the circumambulatory area that is even darker, and then the Garbhagriha, which is total darkness. So it gives a sense of hierarchy of the spiritual spaces. So here again, we see the surface decoration, and it actually looks like you see a fake doorway on the left, a fake doorway on the right. It's like mimicking the actual doorway of the temple. And each of these doorways, it looks like, has a skyscraper tower on top of it with an amalaka on top of it, that flattened, grooved disc. Okay, so let's see a variety of examples. Today is simply going to be a tour of various temples throughout all of India. Some are very unique and very world famous. In this case, we're looking at the back of the temple. You enter from the front, where the mandapa, the steps are located. And look at this. In this case, you walk around the Garbhagriha, do your circular prayer ritual. Look how open it is. It's a very open space where a lot of light can come in. And then once you do your circumambulation, then you can walk into the Garbhagriha, which, as you see, is located directly under the Shikara Tower. Okay, and here's another example. So once you start understanding the various shapes, the various parts, there's a universal consistency. So there you have your steps leading into the open air porch. Then you have an interior space to walk around in a circle, and the Garbhagriha is under the tower. So look at it this way. I got an open air mandapa. Then over the enclosed space, there's like another rectangular roof line. So you got the rectangular roof line of the outside porch. Then you have another rectangular roof line, which designates the space for moving around inside. The Garbhagriha is only the square underneath that tower. This one, it's very easy to see when you look at the tower, each of those horizontals, very clearly defined. So at some point, these floors, these bhumi, the floors of the skyscraper become so abstract and so compressed, it no longer looks like floors of a building. So what you need to do is, you first look at the amalaka, the groove disc, the cosmic egg. Look at how they design it. Look at the shape. Look at the grooves. And then look at the corner of the shikara. And you will see in this example, there are 3 cornerstones that look like an amalaka. There's one directly under the big egg, and then not, then another one that looks grooved, not, another one that is grooved, not. So the ones that are not grooved, those represent the floors of the building. So you got 2 floors, then you have a ridged cosmic egg, then you have 2 floors, then a cosmic egg, then you got 2 floors and a cosmic egg. So one way that we generally describe a tower is how many Amalakas do you see? How many levels or how many layers exist? So obviously, as we will see today, temples that are very elaborate have a lot of these floors, a lot of these stories, a lot of these cosmic eggs embedded within the layering of the tower. In terms of symbolism, having 3 Amalakas, 6, 7, 10, 20, there is no additional symbolism, but obviously it represents not just the wealth of the temple, but also the intensity of the energy that is being transmitted. Okay, so here we see the outside porch, and then actually there's nothing else. You just enter right into the Garbhagriha, which constitutes the ground plan, the ground measurement that becomes the tower up above. So when you see the Garbhagriha, you can understand where the first floor is, the dimensions of the Garbhagriha, the height of the womb chamber. And then like the last example, oh, there I see the grooved stone that looks like an Amalaka. There's another one, there's another one, there's another one. So in this case, I've got 4 cornerstones that have the groove. One, obviously, one level here is destroyed, but this has, the last one had 3 Amalaka levels. This has 4 Amalaka levels. Again, it's just a sense of elaboration and decoration. And on the top, again, a more flattened Amalaka with the grooves. Now, Hindu temple architecture is extremely structured by the scriptures. So every molding, every level of the foundation, Gita, all of these are very prescribed in the architectural manuals. So they have special names and are to be decorated in a particular fashion. So in number 21, it's something we've seen many times before. We have cave complexes. We have the carving in live rock, as we had in Buddhism. So from looking at this from the outside, it clearly looks like a vihara. And it has a similar type of construction as the viharas at the Buddhist complexes. So there we have the columns carved out of the live rock. You actually can see that it is the live rock and the interior spaces. Generally in India, the place, the area that has the best would be like Gujarat around Mumbai, Western India, where many of these Hindu cave complexes are constructed. And if you go to Mumbai, you take a little boat ride to the island of Elephanta, and that is the most famous, most easily accessible of all of the Hindu complexes. So here we've just come from the outside inside. So this would constitute like a mandapa in a cave excavation in a live rock Hindu temple. So the columns we saw on the outside, the columns are here. Because so much of the interior space has been carved away, you do structurally need the columns in order to ensure the stability of the cliff face. So in number 23, that's your Garbhagriha. So that mandapa is that semi-open space where the light is coming in from outside, and here out of the live rock, like in Buddhist taichas, we saw the stupa was carved out of the live rock. Here the Garbhagriha is carved in the live rock. This temple is dedicated to Shiva. So therefore we have images of Shiva and his related deities on the exterior of the Garbhagriha. Now in the back of the wall, we actually have the image of the three faces of Shiva. So there he is with attendants, with demons, with a whole host of deities that are honoring his presence. So again, this is carved into the live rock in the back of the complex. So there's another site, just as we had cave complexes during the Buddhist era at Badami and Ellora, those sites were still being excavated even into the Hindu era. So this is a whole complex, not just one building, a whole complex that is carved from the live rock. So number one looks like, your entryway, walking up the steps, like a little lobby. Number two, again, would be an exterior. There you see down there the Nandi shrine. Obviously, if Nandi's outside of the temple is dedicated to Shiva. As you see, number 7, there are a couple 7s here, so you can have a mandapa on more than one side, giving access to the building from multiple sides. And then number 4 would be a more secluded, closed-in mandapa, and your Garbhagriha is number 5. So look at the long axis of procession from number 1 to number 2 to number 7 to number 4 to number 5. And so all of these transitions in your prayer from the external world until you finally get into the internal world represented by number 5. But then you have number 6s with our various other shrines. And then you have at the bottom of this ground plan and at the top of the ground plan, it looks like viharas. So you have like viharas that are placed around the main sanctuary. But when you look at number 26, you get a scale of what we're talking about here. So let's look at the top of the photo. So at the top there you have your neighborhood, you have the landscape. Again, it needs to be in forest, it needs to be in fertile territory because that represents an efficacious landscape. Then you have coming down, let's go from the top to the bottom, then you have your little gateway, then it's hard to see because the overlap, the Nandi shrine. Then you have this large square that has like a circular decoration on the top of the roof. That obviously is the large mandapa. And what we have immediately in front of us is the Garbhagriha, and there you have the Shikara Tower with the Amalaka. Again, this is more Western India, a little more towards the south. So therefore, the floors of the tower look different. The Amalaka looks different. In this case, when we get further south in India, the floors actually look like floors of a building. They actually have more substance. They're not compressed to the point where they just become decoration. So we have at the very bottom of the slide there, you have your Garbhagriha, your full-size inhabitable level. And then I see one other floor, 2 floors, 3 floors. So it looks like 3 floors. You have your Garbhagriha, then 3 floors of the tower, then you have your cosmic egg. In this case, the egg is not grooved. It's not a flat grooved disc. Really doesn't look like much of an egg. It looks more like a, 8-sided, I don't know what you want to call it, an 8-sided, segmented, maybe a different type of pumpkin. But once you see the Amalaka, can you see repetitions of that at the corners of the floors, of the 3 floors of the building? Again, some of the levels are not in good condition, but you can see them on the corners. So they help to define for you where a floor of the building begins and ends. Then on the left side of the slide, you can see people walking into a vihara. On the right side, the same thing. Here we're like at the front looking back at the same temple. So look at the succession of various structures. They're open, they're closed, they're half open, half closed. But again, all of this is carved from the live rock. All of it is carved from the mountain. Nothing added. It's just as we saw before, everything subtracted. So not only are they carving the outside and all the decoration of these various units, but then they have to go inside and carve out the inside of these monolithic masses of stone in order to make them habitable and functional. So here, walking around it, and we can see a sense of the human scale. As I mentioned before, each of these floors of the foundation have different names, and many of them have decorations of animals. You can have various levels that are geese, birds, here elephants, and here we see an elephant's level to the foundation that's very extensively carved. And then what we see on the left, the back, those are the entrances to the viharas. So in slide number 30, we're inside. It's like half open, half closed, some light coming in, even though this has a lot of artificial light for the photographer. And there we're looking into the Garbhagriha. So they carve like the columns on the inside, the statues, the decorations of the ceilings. All of this is live rock. From central India, we're now going to look at perhaps one of the most famous of all of the Hindu temples. It is located at the site of Khajuraho. To give you a sense of the date of these structures, it's about 1,000 years old, built in the 11th century. Again, many of these later temples are constructed of stone, not of brick. So you are walking up these levels of staircases. There we have the open air porch, a few open air porches, until we get all the way into the womb chamber. So here we have a side view of it. So where we were last time, there you see the staircase. You have the first porch. You can actually see through it. You can see the blue sky through it, very open air. Then you have porch number 2. You can see that porch number 2, you can't see all the way through. It's a little bit darker. Porch number 3, there you see it, another balcony that's facing us, much more heavy, much more massive, much more enclosed. Then you see the 4th opening. That is a part of the circular path around the Garbhagriha. So the Garbhagriha is under the center of the tallest tower. So over each mandapa, you have a tower. So the first one's a smaller tower, then a slightly medium-sized tower, a bigger tower, and then the large symbolic tower. So the 3 smaller towers have like that pot of plenty, but it is the huge tower that is over the Garbhagriha, over the union of the linga and the yoni, that has the cosmic egg. Now, not only, look at the main tower, not only do we have this huge tower with a cosmic egg, but look at all the baby towers that are attached to it. So a sense of fertility and multiplicity and reproduction and generation. Even that large tower in its fertility is producing a lot of babies that are clinging to the parent. So in this case, rather than looking at floors, look at the number of rows of mini towers. 1, 2, 3, 4. If I just look at what's attached to the main tower at this one corner. So that multiplicity is another representation of fertility. So here I have the ground plan to again give you a sense of how it's structured. The stairs, the porch, the large open air porch, then another mandapa, then the real big mandapa. Then I have that space to walk around the Garbhagriha. There we have the Garbhagriha, right in the middle of the axis mundi. So the Garbhagriha is proportionally a very small part of the building, but obviously the most important part where the god is alive, potent, working their magic. So here I have another diagram, a cross section, and this brings up another very important issue. So I colored in yellow the places where you can walk. We have our open air porch, the next mandapa, the large mandapa, and then at the back we can see like the ring aisle where you can walk around the Garbhagriha. So you only can walk where it's yellow, but the rest is the towers. You cannot enter that additional space. There's no staircase. There's no place to walk. It's all for external view. It has no function. It's simply construction materials and the infrastructure to hold up those towers. But you can see that there is just as much construction thought given to the towers of the mandapas as the actual mandapas and functional spaces. So that's why I say it's like a cave, a cavern in the middle of a mountain. It actually looks like a mountain range, and you walk into the mouth of the cave. Now there's another point that is extremely important here. You can see that the mandapas are all in one line, and the roof line of the porch, first mandapa, the grand mandapa, and the Garbhagriha are all in one line. But the floor rises. The floor is not even. So while the ceiling is continuous, you keep walking up a few stairs. So as you enter the cave within the mountain, there is a greater sense of compression as the space becomes shorter and shorter and shorter. That also gives a sense that by the time you get to the Garbhagriha, you're into the real Mother Earth. You're into that real recess. And the fact that the space is shorter and smaller and more intimate is supposed to give a greater connection with the spiritual power. So I'm just showing a couple more details from Khajuraho. Here we have the decoration of the ceiling of the grand mandapa, of the large mandapa. Extremely elaborate, very elaborate. So again, it's carved stone blocks that have been, carved and then assembled in place, but giving that sense of luxuriance of that cosmic fertility. And in slide number 36, again, looking from the mandapa and the Garbhagriha, this is not Khajuraho, but again, to give you a reminder of what is going on. So there we're actually looking in at the linga in the yoni. So in some of these cases, you can't walk in, this is too high, you can't step in there. But again, it is the mysterious interior space that embodies the universal union. Now, Khajuraho is extremely famous for the exterior carvings. In slide number 38, we see the surfaces completely covered with relief sculptures. And the reason why Khajuraho gets so much interest is because of the Mithuna couples, the loving couples that are very erotically displayed on the exterior. Some of the figures, as you see on the lower level in this slide, are just standing. That S curve to the body of the three bends. Again, it's the indigenous style. It's the same type of body form that we've seen. But then on some of the upper levels, we have various Kama Sutra or other sexual positions that again represent the unity of the male and female principles, the two merging back into one. If inside of the Garbhagriha you have the linga and the yoni, this is the same representation on a more human mindset, a more human visualization, more earthly visualization, more concrete of that union of linga and yoni, but in a very physical, fleshy manifestation. So here in slide number 39, people like to look at it, the variety of different postures and positions. There's no sense of pornography, no sense of disgrace, no sense of vulgarity here. It is all very much the tapas and rasa, the lila, the erotic play that is an important part of keeping the earth in balance. And number 40 is a close-up. And next slide, number 41 is another close-up. Again, it's a cosmic metaphor. It's a symbolic metaphor for unification. These body proportions may not be very practical, but it represents that sense of well-being and divine spirit. Now, there is an explanation that covering a temple with all of these Mithuna couples, all these loving couples, prevents evil and ill will from hurting the temple. I've also heard that these loving couples will prevent the temple from being hit by lightning. So they have an auspicious aspect as well. So let's look at some other temples. Again, mostly from Eastern India here. So you can recognize, there's the porch. This porch is a little more enclosed than many of the others we've seen. And there you have your Garbhagriha with a tower up above. So you can figure out where the first floor of the Garbhagriha ends. You can look at the Amalaka, the grooved disc in this case, and then you look at all the grooved disc on that edge corner. So that'll help you figure out how many stories are in this temple. So you have the one story, that's the Garbhagriha. Then I see one grooved disc, a second, a third, a fourth, and the fifth, right where the edge curves inward. So it's 5 floors. It's the Garbhagriha plus 5 floors. So here we have the entryway, a mandapa that is more enclosed than open, and then the Garbhagriha. Well, then you have another mandapa, and then the Garbhagriha. Look at that big Amalaka disc. And even in this one, I can see that same disc on that edge corner. 1, 2, 3, and then obviously the sculptures are covering it. Here we have a better view of that temple. So again, the first floor with the Garbhagriha, then I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 Amalakas on that edge line. So it's Garbhagriha plus 5 floors and then the large Amalaka. In this case, the Amalaka is as wide as the top of the tower. Some people say that the shape, this gently curving inward shape with the Amalaka on the top, is also supposed to be looking like the linga. So again, the sense of the cave or cavern in the mountain. The cave is obviously a female metaphor, and the verticality of the shikara is supposed to be the male element. Just as we saw, the linga comes out of the yoni. So the shikara is seen as a masculine metaphor. So we're just going to look quickly at some of these others. Look at that shikara, and it's almost impossible to count how many floors. Each level is becoming so compressed, so abstract, so linear that it simply becomes a decorative element. So in Eastern India, the area of Orissa and Bhubaneswar, these levels become more and more decorative, and many people think are more and more beautiful. And you see the general curvature from the very bottom all the way to the top. It gently curves inward. It has a more elegant external contour line. And here we have a detail, and again you see the increased elaboration as time goes on. All right, so we'll look at a temple that's a little different. And this is, as it says there in the ground plan, it's Konaraka. It's a temple not dedicated to Shiva or Vishnu, it's dedicated to Surya. We didn't discuss Surya. Surya is the sun god. And just like Apollo in Greek mythology, Apollo drives the sun chariot across the heavens from the east to the west every day. That is the explanation for the sun crossing up above. It's a very similar thing here. Surya is the sun god. He has a chariot and he has horses that drive the chariot across the heavens. So here we can see within the plan, there's a dance pavilion. That's a separate structure. Then we see staircase, mandapa, and then we have the garbhagriha, and various, it says Surya on horse, Surya on chariot, Surya on chariot. So let's see what this looks like. So here we're at the very beginning. We're looking up the steps. We have unusual creatures left and right because they are helping to carry the chariot across the heavens. Then we have our open air areas on our platforms. So this nice little transition as we proceed through the structure. When we get closer to the main body, there we have these like griffin creatures. It's like a griffin horse on top of elephants. And it looks like they're leaping because obviously the sun chariot, Surya's chariot, has to leap up into the heavens every day. So it looks like the elephants are providing balance and structure so that the horses can leap off of their backs. So here we're getting closer. Obviously, much has been destroyed. We can see the entry into the actual temple. Here we have a detail of the tower, of the shikara. So here you can actually see very easily every single horizontal element that represent various architectural forms within the skyscraper. And then we have like a little break there with figures. Then again, we have our horizontal lines. We have a break with figures, horizontal lines, and then we have the groove discs at the very top. So what is most interesting about Konaraka is that on the platform for the main temple structure, the garbhagriha, the shikara, we have the wheels of the celestial chariot. So there you can see these very large wheels. You have people, so you can get a sense of their scale. And then also on the walls, you have your loving couples, your Mithuna couples. Here we have a detail of one of the wheels, beautifully decorated, with various figures, look like yakshas, yakshis, various narratives surrounding them. And here's a detail of the spokes of one of the wheels of the sun chariot. And you have your Mithuna couples, or you have women represented on each of the spokes. Again, look behind it, it's vegetation. It is a representation of vines and plants and flowers and leaves. And again, it all represents this synthesis, this intersection between human, earthly, natural, supernatural fertility and prosperity. So now we'll look at examples from southern India. And it looks like the cave temple that we saw before. And also, like the cave temple, this is carved out of live rock. So the question is, but where's the mountain? They carved the entire mountain away to reveal these sanctuaries. Now, the way you can recognize South India, again, is from looking at the Amalaka style. And it looks like that eight-sided bell, pumpkin, we called it various things. And because there are fewer floors in a southern tower, it's much easier to see each floor separately. So this one is 3 floors plus the Amalaka, very cleanly, clearly represented. So actually, we're looking at the back. So this is the Shikara over the Garbhagriha. You can see columns around the outside so people can walk in a circular fashion. So the actual circumambulatory around the Garbhagriha is more open here. And there you have the other mandapas in front of it. But there you have the excess stone. And you can see the foundation is more or less like melting into the geological reality of the landscape. So this is a building like Ellora that was completely carved free. The mountain has completely disappeared. So again, it's south. Carving away a mountain, leaving this little sanctuary. Some of them are big, some of them are small, but all carved from the live rock. Now these are at the seashore, so again, at a propitious location of water, of fertility, of a lot of greenery. So even if there is a, hopefully not, but a tsunami, this all survives on the seashore. This is all a permanent fixture of the landscape. So it's the same thing. As we see here, multi-story buildings. Some are carved from the live rock. Some of them, like this one, is actually a construction. But you can see clearly each floor, the notion of a multi-storied structure. Again, none of those spaces are functional. You can't walk into it. It simply is for the external visual effect and the symbolism of the mountain. There we see it from another angle, a detail of the carvings. So you actually can see on each floor has windows, simulation carvings that look like windows, roof lines, balconies. They're actually trying to adopt the wooden architectural traditions of India. We've seen it before when we have a discussion on Vishnu's Maya. And this is, again, carving live rock. At the very center, you have the gods and all these people, whether it be angels, demons, animals, rich and poor, are all coming to the center where the water drips down. You can barely see it, but at the very top, there's a little channel. Looks triangular in this image, a triangular channel that comes down the center in a recess. So the water trickles down there, and then all these people, the animals, are coming towards the water. That is the Mother Ganges, the Indus, represents the blessings on earth. So here again, from the south, you recognize the southern temple with that more bell-shaped, squared Amalaka. On the left, it looks more like a central one with a grooved Amalaka disc. And who's that on the right of the slide? That's Nandi. So just by the vehicle, you know that this is a temple dedicated to Shiva. So again, this is not carved live rock, this is cut stone, but again, very easily you can see the various floors of the tower, the Shikara. It has quite a few relief carvings. They look like framed relief carvings. Various episodes, various narratives, war, palace scenes. And here we have a servant giving her lady. Could be jewelry, it could be food. It's hard to see because of the condition of the image. Again, we're not talking much about anatomy, proportion, mass, ethnicity, because obviously you have the prana, you have the body of the three bends, you have the indigenous Indian face with the round head, full cheeks, eyes on top of the surface of the face, lips on the surface of the face. The nose is hard to see. It's a little wide. The big earrings, the summer skirts, the big belts, many of the elements that we have seen before. So here again, from the south, we have a slightly different type of amalaka, smoother, and then we have the various floors in the structure itself. I just wanted to show this. Here we have a linga in a yoni within a garbhagriha. Obviously a lot of puja, a lot of worship. It's an active temple, obviously, where there is clothing, there are fabrics, there are flowers, in order to, as a part of the ritual offerings. The linga without its clothing. So this is actually what it looks like, the linga within the yoni. So you can see in ritual prayer how people bring presents to the Holy of Holies. It's obvious who this one belongs to, because right there in front of the temple, looking at the temple inside the gateway, is Nandi. So there's Nandi, so that's another temple dedicated to Shiva. Again, the large Amalaka, this is also southern India, Tanjore. So here we see the various horizontal lines for the levels. So we didn't go into it, but each shikara has a different style name, Latina, Kutina. So that refers to the way each of those multiple floors are represented, the shape of the Amalaka, and so forth. So here in Tanjore, one of the largest of their temples, again, you can see the first floor very clearly articulated, the floor of the Garbhagriha articulated, the next floor, the first floor, the tower, you can see like individual pavilions, individual shrines, each one with its own roof line. And then each successive story is smaller and smaller and smaller, more and more compressed, but it retains all of its elements. The number of shrines, the number of roof lines are all very nicely represented. Here we see, obviously, a more recent temple structure. And this is East India. We looked at Bhuvaneshwar and Orissa before, but this shows what happens when we get to the more contemporary modern era. And the introduction of color, the introduction of perhaps more representation, more figures. It varies from location to location. But as we approach your assessments for the Hindu part of the course, instead of a test, you're going to do a comparative analysis between an older traditional work of art and a more contemporary version of the same. An old sculpture with a sculpture from the 20th century. An old painting, maybe a painting from the 17th century or 18th century with a painting from the 21st century. And what about architecture? How does it change over time? How do architects try to modernize it in order to maintain not only artistic and spiritual relevance, but also to make these temple complexes still very functional to meet the needs of the mass audience? Okay, so that's it for our discussion today of Hindu temple architecture. Next time we're going to have a review of Hindu paintings and painting styles. Thank you.